So, Mike, I got a question for you.
Yep.
So, what does 10 and net have in common?
What?
In order to spell them, you need an E, a T, and an N. That was good. That was really good.
We just lost
Back to the pun
73
days.
we just lost 73 subscribers. Everybody that was excited for us to start posting again, they lost all that excitement in one quick sentence. No, but speaking of excitement, I guess let's get right into Travis Etienne and his background. So, in terms of his production, these past couple of years, he's been one of, if not the best running backs in football. Obviously, he had kind of a down year this year in 2020, but I think a lot of that just comes down to you're comparing it to his 2019 and 2018 when this man was running for 1,600 yards and averaging 7.8 and 8.1 yards per carry. I think that he's been one of the most consistent producers in college football, and I do think that the film does back that up to an extent. Is that kind of where you're at on ETN, Mike?
Oh, for sure. I stay, right by it. Obviously, production a little bit this year, a little bit questionable, but those last 2 years, um, they stick out. Just looking at the stats right here, like 1,600 yards back to back. Obviously, this year, 2020 was a little bit of an odd year, just a little bit, but still the down production. Just even if you don't look at full yards, if you just look at average per attempt, like that's down substantially from even his freshman year, which isn't concerned. But the other side, you look at receiving yards, and that's up substantially. So, um, but yeah, no, just productivity is obviously it stands out.
I know one thing that we should probably mention because we just talked about it in our Javante Williams video that you guys haven't seen that. Click the link above our heads. But Javante in his whole college career, he only had just over 300 carries, and we were talking about how that was potentially a positive. Well, ETN, you almost wonder if I'm not saying it is, but you almost wonder if this past year was down because now he's had 600 carries under his belt, and being a 5'10", 205 guy, has that had kind of a negative toll on his body? Like, where do you fall on that? Do you think it's a concern, or not very much so?
I think it is absolutely. Most people thought he should have came out after his junior year, which, looking at it, he probably should have. Production was obviously down. He had some. It seems like he had some injury concerns. I don't think anything major this year, but like it seems like he was a little banged up here and there. Which with the running back especially, you have a short horizon. And that's why, like kind of getting off topic a little bit, but like when Le'Veon Bell was going through his like franchise tag period where he wouldn't sign with the Steelers, I never blamed him because running backs have such a short playing time. Once they hit 30, it's almost like they're dead. Like AP never made it really past 30. Like, he's going to be an all-time Pro Bowl player, but after 30, he was as good as washed up. So why take another year play in college and then have that productivity down? Yeah, I think it's an absolute concern. Absolutely.
I don't think that that's necessarily fair because we have Frank Gore, the 86-year-old living legend out there, still racking up 500 yards a season. But no, I'm kind of in the same boat where it's potentially his biggest concern, in all honesty. But I do still think that what you saw this year was pretty positive on film, and that's why as we get into it, I do have him graded as my running back one. I think that just the combination of his vision, his speed and acceleration, his ability to evade guys. He's maybe not going to truck through them, but they're also not really going to truck through him and bring him down either. He does a good job of kind of bouncing off guys and playing off these weaker arm tackle attempts to where he can turn a maybe 3-4 yard run into 10, 15, 20. And I do think that's certainly what stands out on film for me. Obviously not a great pass blocker, but I mean, you saw him, he had 40 plus receptions this past season. That's probably not what you're going to be using him as. So, Mike, how do you kind of react to this grade? Do you agree with it, or what kind of categories stick out to you as either accurate or inaccurate?
No, I like him a lot. The only one I do have a question, pass catching, you have 7.5. I think it's exactly what you had Williams at. So obviously some of the production there. A little bit of question there, but
I think that the difference there was that with ETN, so many of those receptions were just these short little dump offs. Whereas when I'm looking at somebody who's in the eights, nines, tens, I'm trying to look for somebody that could actually like run sophisticated routes. You know, we're getting into like the Alvin Kamara territory, or even say, I mean, J.D. McKissick this season for Washington was actually a decent example. I don't quite think Kamara is at that level, but I do think that he's a guy who, you know, if you have a quarterback that's willing to check down, with which Lawrence most definitely is, as we'll potentially talk about in a future video, I think that that's where Etienne kind of shined. It wasn't necessarily the routes and plays out of the backfield that were him creating stuff for himself, more so just check it down to him and let him go. So that's why I gave him a 7.5, even though the production was there, if that makes sense.
For sure. And just off one more, just off, watching some film and just seeing him through the years, I think vision might be a little bit high. I think a lot of times you can make that one cut um, or you just find the gap, but nothing about him like just stood off film. He can make obviously plays like any running back can, but um, just a lot of them. I don't think he made plays off vision. I don't think 18 might be a little high from where I would have graded him, but um, he obviously has it, but I think 18 might be just a little bit high.
I, I can see that. I can, and vision is definitely a hard thing to kind of quantify, you know, because
Yeah.
sometimes I might say a play, oh, that's great vision, and then you could say, oh no, that's just his speed. You know, like there's kind of a divide there where it's almost tough to quantify. But I do think that in terms of his ability to anticipate plays more downfield, maybe not in terms of okay, just hit the hole and go, and find the hole and go, I should say, but more so reading his blocks and making the correct cuts downfield and extending those medium plays into big ones. I think that's kind of where I gave him incredibly high marks on vision. I do think that he does a solid job of finding that initial hole, so I'm not going to bash him there. You could say some of that's due to the offense, though, right? Obviously played with fantastic talent out there. Not only the offensive line, but of course Trevor Lawrence, that wide receiver core, etc. So I can see why someone would say it might be a little bit high, but I think that through watching all of this film, I do think that he kind of warrants maybe 17, 18 ish grade. But other than that, I I didn't have too many areas where I thought that there was much debate. In all honesty, I didn't think he was good in pass protection. I didn't think he was incredibly good in terms of the power department. Although you're not getting him to be a power back, so that's why you maybe could go a little bit lower on that. But I'm not going to penalize him twice, if that makes sense, because that's just not his play style. And yeah, obviously you could say size, okay, 5'10, 210, maybe that should be a 3.5 or something. But I do think overall, I would grade him right around the early second round, if that makes sense. So even though there might be some disparity between the categories, do you agree with that at least, or no?
Yeah, for sure. That's right where I have him. Obviously, we had a similar conversation with Williams, but if a team late in the first round, running back was a position of need, and ETN fits their system and their style, then I wouldn't knock it at all. But I guess with that, early second round grade, do you have maybe a comp for him? It's pretty
Uh,
early draft pick.
Yeah, I think a good comp for me that jumped off the tape was sort of a Dalvin Cook, whereas a guy who is primarily speed and acceleration based, he'll make you miss in space. He's again, that's kind of where the pass catching grade came in, where I don't think Dalvin's a guy that is going out there and running these beautiful option and angle routes to get all these receptions, but hey, dump it off to him and he can go, if that makes sense. I think that he was a really good comp for me. I know you had one as well, Mike. Do you want to go on with that? Where maybe it's not as high as a Dalvin, but I'll let you take the floor there.
Yeah, so mine was just Aaron Jones right off the bat. Solid at everything, doesn't necessarily excel at really, any one area. Is Aaron Jones probably has a little bit more power than ETN does, but ETN probably makes up for a little bit in that speed and acceleration category. So that's where your Dalvin Cook comp comes through. But I think in the pass catching, I think they both can be very versatile weapons, and I think they can be used. Are they going to be what opens up your pass game? Probably not, but if you get them lined up on a linebacker or even a safety, I think they could make plays um, in the open field. So
No, I completely agree with that. I do think that's a good way to put it. A lot of people are comparing him to Alvin Kamara just straight off, and I don't know. I don't really know what it is. If it's just because they both wore orange in college, I'm not entirely sure. Maybe it's the dreads. That's a bad comparison, in my opinion. I think that he's a better pure runner than Alvin Kamara. Maybe they're similarly dynamic, but I think their dynamic is in two separate two separate areas. So I'm like, where do you agree with the Kamara comp, or I assume not the way you're shaking your head, but
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Kamara is he he's his own in his own category as just an offensive weapon, especially the pass catching game. Like, no, absolutely not. I think kind of back to my comparison, like being a Lions fan, I've seen Aaron Jones beat a linebacker like Jelani Tavai on a wheel route plenty of times, and I think ETN can do that. But like on a consistent basis, absolutely not. So, no, I think Kamara is in a league of his own in that kind of just dual threat type of running back.
yeah, no, I definitely agree. I was just curious to hear what you had to say based on the way you're shaking your head. So with that being said, we talked about this in the last video, just kind of a graphical, visual representation of how those grades break down. So Mike, big picture, obviously, just keeping it to ETN and Javante. Do you have ETN over Javante, and if so, what do you think of the margin? You know, a lot of people they have Javante as a third round guy, ETN as a late one, so obviously that's a wide margin. You can see I have it much more narrow than that. Where do you fall there?
I think it's really close. Would I probably have ETN above Williams? Yes, but I think it's almost fascinating. If I'm a team that, maybe if I'm late in the first round and I already kind of have the offensive weapons around me, maybe I have the offensive line pieces, then I want ETN to be my player. I think he can make plays with, in better opportunities. But if I'm a team, kind of early in the second round, there's a reason I'm there. And I need a running back that might be able to, generate his own kind of yards, either yards after contact or, anything like that. Maybe find that second lane. Then I might lean Williams. But it's kind of fascinating. I think they're both real. They're not. It's hard to compare them. I think they're two very different backs. But I think for a better team, ETN might be the fit. But for a team that might need a little bit more help from that position, maybe Williams might be the better fit for them.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think they're both, like I said, they're both really dynamic, but dynamic in different ways. You know, again, one's more put his shoulder down, truck through you, but can also evade you, whereas ETN's more just run by you or uses his agility to get past you. I don't know. I think it's a really interesting discussion to be had. I wouldn't be shocked if Williams turns out to be the better prospect, but a lot of that comes out to, again, as you said, the situation you end up in. You know, would I be shocked if ETN went late first round to a contending team, whereas Javante goes to the Bengals or something? I wouldn't be shocked if ETN looks much better than Javante just based off that situation. But I do think, as you said, they're pretty tight in terms of that margin between them. So with that being said, Mike, is that all, or what? Do you have anything else you want to add here?
I think that's about it. I think we mic'd up and now we micing out. Doses.
Peace, guys.